Hello and welcome to TheNonProphets, broadcasting to you from the Glasser Studios in beautiful sunny Austin, Texas. This show is brought to you by the Atheist Community of Austin. I'm the host, Jeff Dee. Our co-host, once again, is Vic Farrow. Say hi, Vic.
Hi, Vic.
And our producer is Russell Glasser. Today's opening music was A Change Is Gonna Come by Devo. We are live December 22, 2001. The Atheist Community of Austin is a non-profit educational organization promoting positive atheism and the separation of church and state. We have weekly meetings every Sunday morning at the Hot Jumbo Bagel Shop. Once again, this is in Austin, Texas. 307 West 5th Street at 10:30 a.m., except for the first Sunday of each month when we have our lecture series at 11 a.m. in the Longhorn Room of Fur's Cafeteria at North Cross Mall. ACA board meetings take place at 10 before the regular show. Before the regular meeting, on the second Sunday of each month. The Godless Gamers, a spin-off group of the ACA, meets every Monday night at 7 p.m. at my place to play board games, card games, very occasionally role-playing games, word games, what have you. ACA Happy Hour is at Antonio's near Highway 35 and 183 every Wednesday night at 7 p.m. For more information, you can call our voicemail at 512-371-2911 or visit our website at www.atheist-community.org. Now I'd like to turn it over to Vic for news.
Okay. Just a couple of short items today. Apparently, Falwell is the same shameless ignoramus that he always is, has decided to cash in on... Well, actually, he's lying. He's saying the art... Okay, momentary brief pause while I learn how to speak again. Falwell's new fundraising letter sent more than 2 million Christians. The Reverend Falwell pledged to take advantage of President Bush's current popularity to press aggressively for a full-time family values agenda in the United States. In another article, it's claimed that the Bush administration has completely backed away from Falwell and denied Falwell's claim that President Bush has endorsed his fundraising appeal. Another bit of news, and a columnist named Ann Coulter, apparently from the National Review, was fired for saying, and I quote, "Airports scrupulously apply the same laughable, ineffective airport harassment to Susie Chapstick as to Muslim hijackers. And it is preposterous to assume that every passenger is a potential crazed homicidal maniac. We know who the homicidal maniacs are. They're the ones cheering and dancing right now. We should invade their countries, kill their leaders, and convert them to Christianity." Apparently this was too much for the National Review, and they fired her. And I didn't have a whole lot of news today, so we'll go back to Jeff.
I'll turn it back to me. I've got a little bit more. Want to remind anybody out there listening to our show that we are not yet a live call-in show, though that is the plan. We're still working on solving that particular technical hurdle. In the meanwhile, if you want to interact with us, if you have questions, comments, anything else to contribute, you can log into the Atheist Network chat page. Just go to www.atheistnetwork.com and click on the chat link. I've got a little bit more news here. This is astounding. Apparently, our House of Representatives has passed a resolution. This was on May 21st, so this is old news, but you probably haven't heard of this before. House of Resolution. I'm not going to read this whole thing to you. It's a little long, but basically, on May 21st, it was the 1700th anniversary of the adoption of Christianity by the nation of Armenia. And so what happened was our House of Representatives sent them this congratulatory resolution.
Does that mean it's the official national religion?
Russell is asking if that means that it's the official national resolution. We'll get more detail if I go through all these whereases, which I wasn't going to do, but let's do it. Whereas the Armenian people have lived in their homeland for more than 3,000 years and created a unique civilization, except for its religion, apparently, which they swipe from elsewhere. adopted it 1,700 years ago. Whereas two of Jesus Christ's own disciples, St. Thaddeus and St. Bartholomew, introduced Christianity in Armenia and were the original founders of the Armenian Church. Remember, this is our House of Representatives talking here, folks. Whereas in 301 AD, St. Gregory the Illuminator Christianized the entire country of Armenia, was consecrated the first Catholicos of Armenia, and baptized King Durtad of Armenia as a Christian. Whereas in 301 AD, King Durtad declared Christianity to be the official religion of Armenia. There's your answer, Russell. Making it the first Christian state in the world. Aha! The agenda becomes... Who is? Russell's saying, who's... No, they're not. It's not a resolution saying, boy, we wish we'd been the first Christian nation. It's just a resolution saying, congratulations, you've been Christians for 1,700 years. Whereas Armenian church leaders opened schools, cared for the sick and needy, and created alphabets for Armenia and Georgia to make the scriptures more accessible to the people. Apparently, before Christianity, they didn't have education or medicine or needy people that got cared for, apparently, according to our House of Representatives. Whereas Armenians' devotion to God led them to create distinctive styles of manuscript, illustration, architecture, scripture, and textiles that are recognized as masterpieces of Christian art and as major contributions to world art, apparently implying that any art from Armenia before it became Christian is unworthy of notice by the art community. Whereas the Armenian Church has persevered in its faith throughout the past 17 centuries in cultures that were hospitable to it and others that were hostile. Whereas the Armenian Church actively participates in ecumenical bodies and movements uniting Christians in all denominations worldwide. Yeah, you know, there's always Armenian guys acting as go-betweens between, you know, like the Jews and the Roman Catholics, or the Baptists and the Methodists here in the United States. I see that all the time. Whereas more than 100 communities throughout the United States will celebrate the 1700th anniversary of the acceptance of Christianity in Armenia with special worship and ecumenical services. Whereas in celebration of the 1700th anniversary, His Holiness Karakin II will visit the United States, because, of course, the United States is where Armenia got Christianity 1,700 years ago, right? That's why he's coming here for the celebration. Whereas the 1700th anniversary is an appropriate occasion to celebrate the ideals and values shared by the people of the United States, the people of Armenia, and the Armenian Church in America. Implying, again, falsely, that America is a Christian nation. Whereas representatives of the Christian, Jewish, and Muslim faiths, including representatives of the Armenian Church, the National Conference of Catholic Bishops, and the National Council of Churches of Christ in the USA, will celebrate an ecumenical prayer service on May 30, 2001, at the Catholic Basilica of the National Shrine of the Immaculate Conception on the occasion of the 1700th anniversary, because, you know, Jews and Muslims have such a big stake in Armenia becoming Christian. Whereas the Armenian Church, the National Conference of Catholic Bishops, and the National Council of Churches of Christ in the USA have chosen the theme Walking Together in the Light of Our Lord as the message to embrace the ecumenical spirit of brotherhood on the occasion of the 1700th anniversary. Notice, there were no Muslims or Jews in that group. Whereas the Armenian Church has established parishes throughout the United States and has contributed to the equality of religious life in this nation. Do we write these resolutions to, to the Muslim nations, thanking them for all the Muslim mosques in the United States? Do we do that?
Oh, of course not. Muslims are heathens.
Resolved by the House of Representatives, the Senate concurring, that the Congress congratulates the Republic of Armenia on the occasion of the 1700th anniversary of the acceptance of Christianity in Armenia, welcomes His Holiness blah-de-blah, joins with the people of Armenia, the Armenian Church in America, and His Holiness blah-de-blah in celebrating the ideas and values they share with the people of the United States. Okay. And a big middle finger fuck you to the Congress of the United States of America. Yes, Vic?
So what business is the question that comes to mind is, what business do we have recognizing another country's religion of any kind for any reason? I don't get that.
It's interesting here because this one of these whereases. Let's see.
Whereas we're a bunch of pandering politicians looking for votes.
No, I'm trying to find it here. This is not the founding of the state of Armenia.
No.
If it was, then as one nation to another, we can say happy birthday, right? Armenia already existed. It just wasn't Christian until 1,700 years ago. And so, in answer to your question, Vic, our Congress has no business writing to some other country and saying, congratulations on being the same religion as we are going to pretend our nation is.
Yeah.
And having been that for 1,700 years. It's a complete crock of nonsense.
I've been on vacation this week, and I went to Los Angeles, and I never would have thought this, but I found a place that has more churches than Texas. There are churches on every corner in Los Angeles. There's one street, I forget the name of the street, but between these two sections, there is like a church almost every other building. Everywhere you go, there's a church here, a church there, a little church here, a big church there, church. It's big business in Los Angeles. There are churches all over the place there.
Yeah, well, churches are nothing if not opportunistic, going wherever the money appears to be. Now, on the subject of the United States supposedly being a Christian nation, here's some interesting statistics. The Zondervan Corporation, one of the world's largest publishers of Bibles and Christian books, said that sales jumped immediately after the September 11 attacks. According to the Associated Press, Christian bookstores were reporting weekly sales as much as 40% higher than last year. All right, that's no big surprise. Here's the surprise. George Barna's marketing research firm in Ventura, California, we've on our TV show, we've referred to the Barna Research Group before. This is a Christian research group. They specifically gather statistics on religious trends. They've been analyzing cultural trends and the Christian church since 1984. In the most recent survey, conducted in late October and early November, Barna did a national random telephone sampling of 1,010 Americans. Church attendance figures in the days and weeks following the September 11 attacks rose 25%. Again, no surprise. In August, 73% of adults said they were concerned about the future. In November, that figure had increased to 82%. Still no surprise. At the start of 2000, almost 4 in 10 adults, 38%, said that there are absolute moral truths that do not change situationally. Asked the same question in November, just 2 in 10 adults, 22%, about half as many, claimed to believe that in the existence of absolute moral truth. That is really surprising. You would have thought that in the response to these attacks, people would say, well, people would forget to have some kind of objectivity and just go, well, it's obvious that certain things are always wrong no matter what. But apparently it's gotten people thinking.
Thinking is a good thing.
When asked about the sources of principles or standards on which they base their moral and ethical decisions, the post-attack survey showed that only 1 in 8 adults cited the Bible. The most common sources of guidance trusted by Americans are feelings, 25%, and lessons and values they remember from their parents, 14%. I think those figures sound right to me, but I'm not too encouraged by people turning to their unquestioned upbringing or their unquestioned emotions for their sources of morals and ethics either. When asked to describe their idea of God or the nature of God, those who view him as, quote, the all-powerful, all-knowing, perfect creator of the universe who still rules the world today, dropped from 72% to 68%. There's an erosion in that. Quote, after the attack, millions of nominally churched or generally irreligious Americans were desperately seeking something that would restore stability and a sense of meaning to life, Barna said. Again, quoting him, fortunately, many of them turned to the church. Unfortunately, few of them experienced anything that was sufficiently life-changing to capture their attention and their allegiance. So a lot of people, after the September 11 attacks, got more religious for a few weeks, and then even more dropped out.
And a somewhat related but totally unscientific CNN poll, a question was asked, should religion be judged by the acts of its followers? When I logged on, there were 207,271 votes. 52% said yes.
Yes!
Another 48% said no.
Absolutely.
That's actually a promising little tidbit.
Yeah, that's awesome. I mean, that's not a high percentage, right? 52% is not a high percentage for people saying, you know, if the people that worship or that follow a certain religion act like schmucks, then that's probably a sign that that's a bad religion, right? 52% is not real high, but it's way higher than I'd have expected, and so that's got to be encouraging. Here's something not too terribly encouraging. Okay, everybody else out there heard about this? There's a new take on the Scrooge story. Who was that? Right? That was
Charles
Dickens.
A Christmas Carol.
Right, A Christmas Carol. Thank you. A new take on that, this time by fundamentalists. Scrooge the lawyer. In this fresh retelling, Scrooge, played by Disney movie legend Dean Jones, returns as an atheist and personal injury lawyer who, no surprise, hates Christmas with a passion. Incensed in a manger scene outside City Hall, Scrooge vows to remove it for good. As a firm believer in the separation of church and state, and as president of the local chapter of Atheists Are Us, he is ready and able to rid the town of the little Christ child resting in a manger. Enter Marley, played by actor Reg Grant. Long deceased, Marley returns with a message for his former law partner. Jesus Christ, more than anyone else, has transformed human existence for the good. With help from expert witness Dr. D. James Kennedy, who's apparently he's the producer of this thing. It's his organization founding it. We're getting a nod from Russell. Marley shows Scrooge a few of the many benefits Christ and Christianity have brought to the world, including respect for life, the elevated status of women, the rise of science, and the spread of education. Together, isn't that astounding? Lie, 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 and lie. Together they show why Christmas, even for those who do not believe, is truly a day to celebrate. Okay, now, where do I begin? First of all, and Russell says in some preview or something, go ahead.
Yeah, I've been listening to this guy's radio show because it's always on when I'm driving to work. And he's just been hyping the hell out of it every day for the last month or so. And he played a clip for us where Dean Jones's Scrooge is saying, well, the world would be better off if Jesus had never been born. And then Marley says, you think so, Scrooge? Let me tell you what it would be like. And then D. James Kennedy, the evangelist, comes out and just starts doing his radio spiel, basically. He's like, well, my friends, let me tell you what a horrible place the world would be if Jesus had never been born. And he just does this, probably 10-minute...
That's it?
Yeah, well, no, I mean, it's a full-on movie.
No, but I mean, that's Marley's evidence in this clip. He doesn't, magically whisk Scrooge to a parallel dimension where it's the world without Christianity?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Because that can be kind of gay. But, to top it all, first of all, there's a good chance Christ wasn't ever born, so that's completely beside the point. Secondly, even if Christianity really did cause respect for life, elevate the status of women, promote science, and spread education, even if that was all true, we still got a constitution that says the government cannot be in the position of promoting any one particular religion, or even religion over non-religion. That's the rules. Oh, and for those of you in the chat room, Russell is posting the URL for this show. I'll read it to you here. It's www.scroogeandmarley.tv. And I'm sure that'll take you where you need to go. Okay, now, respect for life. How much respect for life can you possibly get from a religion that says this life don't really count because you die and then you spend eternity in either happy land or bad land? Elevated status of women? Big frickin' joke. Everybody knows that's not true. The rise of science? Many early scientists were Christians, but then at the time in Europe, at the time that science was on the rise, most people were Christians, and we got things like science precursors or almost copies of what we would call modern science in Muslim lands and also in ancient Greece. So that's a load of crock. And the spread of education, the word education never even appears in the Bible. What does Christianity do nowadays for the spread of education? Well, they try to take the backbone of biology out of our schools. That's one thing they do. They have their own little organizations like the Christian athletes things, right? Fellowship for Christian Athletes. Yeah, that's really helping education. No, what that's doing is taking advantage of schools to turn kids into little Christians. Russell, you got something? No. Okay. All right. I want to remind everyone, again, listening out over the internet, that if you want to interact with the show, you can go to www.atheistnetwork.com and click on their chat link to join a live chat session that's running in parallel with the show. Let's see. Here's some news from the Atheist Community of Austin, the sponsors of our show. Let's see. We had the annual solstice party. How did that go, Russell? Was the solstice party a success here at Glasser Studios?
Great party. Lots of food and beer and Life of Brian, the usual stuff.
Yeah, we always watch Monty Python's Life of Brian here. I was there, and it was fun. Let's see. On January 12, the ACA will sponsor a state church separation rally on the south steps of the Texas State Capitol in honor of the 200th anniversary of Jefferson's famous letter to the Danbury Baptists, in which he first referred to a wall of separation between church and state. Representative Elliot Neistat has agreed to be the state official sponsor, and we planned on having ACA speakers and some representatives from other groups. That's, once again, 11 a.m., January 12, here in Austin, Texas. Let's see. A little old news. Last Monday, there was a rally in support of School in Prayer in Palestine, Texas. I don't personally know anybody that went down there to participate in that, but if there's anybody in the chat room or anybody listening who could get on the chat room and give us a report on how that turned out last Monday, we'd like to know, because there were counter-protesters, atheists, and...
what was that again?
That was the Palestine, Texas School Prayer Rally last Monday. Russell is posting this to the message board. What do you think? People on the message board are not paying attention?
No, it's just taking a while.
If anybody there knows how that turned out, that's what we're trying to find out. Also, we're still, far as I know, the ACA is still waiting to hear back from Austin Mayor Garcia about our request to make January the official Celebrate State Church Separation Month. And if we get any more information about that, we'll let you know. What else you got, Russell? Russell? Vic? Anybody?
I was on vacation. I was in...
How did that turn? Tell us about your vacation. You were in California, right? Other than there being a lot of churches. I understand you went to the Holocaust Memorial.
I did. I went to the... it's called the Museum of Tolerance. And they have a rather graphic, detailed exhibit covering roughly 25 years of the time period when Hitler was trying to kill off all the Jews. And he had a whole list of other people that were on, the people he didn't like. But he had this particular hatred for Jewish people, and this particular exhibit was very graphic, and I think everybody should see this. If you ever get in the Los Angeles area, go to the Museum of Tolerance and go through the Holocaust Museum. It was really good. I went to other places too, and I don't know if anybody wants to know about my trip to Hollywood Universal Studios or not. I did have a lot of fun in the Mummy Returns exhibit. That was a riot, because you go into this little maze and there are a few people in there who come out and scare you. Well, I turned into one of those people. I just kind of hid in the place and waited for people to come around the corner and jump out after them. I went through it twice. I had a blast in this thing. But other than that, I didn't see any stars. The only star I saw was Ron Perlman in Houston, all that time in Hollywood and didn't see anybody. I think they're all in the Caymans right now.
So how was Cassandra taking your making an ass of yourself at the exhibit?
She was a trooper. She went along with it okay.
So now back to the subject of Hitler and the Nazi regime killing Jews. Let's not forget where anti-Semitism comes from.
Oh, it's been around a lot longer than even Christianity.
Christianity
perfected it, I would say.
Christianity perpetuated it and happened to be the predominant religion of the countries where the most egregious anti-Semitic acts have been committed.
There has been a long-standing claim that Hitler has been an atheist, and they use a particular quote in this exhibit from Mein Kampf, which Hitler wrote while he was in prison on some political charge, where he says specifically that killing the Jews was essentially doing the Lord's work. Or I'm paraphrasing this, but his exact quote says essentially that he was in good graces with the Lord by killing off Jews. How he could ever be considered an atheist from that, because I don't know of any particular quote at all where you have Hitler stating that he's an atheist at all.
As a matter of fact, here's a quote that shows that Hitler was not an atheist. This is in a speech in Berlin on October 24, 1933. Quote, "We were convinced that the people need and require this faith," talking about Christianity again. "We have therefore undertaken the fight against the atheistic movement, and that not merely with a few theoretical declarations. We have stamped it out." That's Hitler saying, we have stamped out atheism in Germany. Far from being an atheist himself, he was, now, he may not have been a real serious, fundamentalist type believer, but he certainly was, at the very least, taking advantage of what was already inherent in Christianity in order to manipulate people. At the very least. That's enough. We've had, Hitler quotes now 3 weeks in a row.
Yeah, we need to stop talking about Hitler.
Well, you went to the freaking museum. Let's see. Let's just change the tone here a little bit. This is fun. This is of course the holiday season, and I've received some interesting emails from people who are intent on me having a happy holiday season. Okay, or suggesting gifts that I might either want for myself or for others. Okay. Try this potent pheromone formula that helps men and women to attract members of the opposite sex. This is from an email entitled Merry Christmas, KTU. KTU is probably the name of the corporation. Because of all its exciting and expensive ingredients, pheromone concentrate cannot be mass-produced. Only a limited supply is left, and it may not be available weeks from now. It's selling out at a record pace. Don't lose out. Get all the girls or guys you want easily. Excite your mate like never before. Guaranteed. I want to know how...
Wow, you can get girls or guys?
That's what
Where do I sign up?
That is what it says. Well, it's like, it doesn't say, click here for the pheromones to attract guys and here for the pheromones to attract girls. It's apparently one pheromone. It is a unisex pheromone, and just in time for the important holiday season. Yep. When, of course, you want to be having as much sex as possible. But that was kind of subtle and demure compared to this one. Subject, your Christmas gift. Do you want to add 3 to 6 inches to your penis in just weeks? Then click below to find out, and there's a link. That's what I want.
Don't you get those year-round? I do.
But this is for Christmas.
Oh.
Don't you understand? I don't know where these people heard that I have a small penis, but apparently I thought Christmas was the perfect time for me to receive the antidote. My Christmas gift. So there's our holiday wishes. Lots of sex and large penises for everyone.
Martin Wagner in the chat room is making some comments about Hitler. He says, Hitler wrote to Rommel, I guess, your God is for the weak, my God is for the strong. Rommel was Christian. Hitler was harder to peg. He wasn't into theosophy or Wotanism like Himmler. Once he said, I have made a religion out of Parsifal, the Wagner opera. And it also says he saw himself as messianic figure. So I don't know where all that information comes from.
Okay, again, whatever Hitler was, he was not an atheist. He's talking about stamping out atheism. He's believing all kinds of crazy, superstitious things. You don't think of yourself as a messiah if you are a atheist, right? Atheists got no messiahs. There's no, there's no supernatural forces to promote you to messiahhood. And more importantly, though, as someone reminded me, I can't remember, it might have been Martin. The important thing to remember is, no matter what Hitler was, the vast majority of people in Germany that went along with him, right? Those people, if they were motivated by a Christian-sounded message, that makes them Christians. So there's still a danger, no matter what Hitler was.
Well, even more so than that, that every country that the Nazis stormed into, including France, had no trouble finding groups of natives who were willing to kill Jews. Even in France, they had groups that were willing, and they even offered an out. You say if you had a problem with shooting Jews, you didn't have to do that. Nobody refused. At least nobody that they had asked to shoot Jews.
And why was that?
Because the anti-Semitism goes a lot deeper than Christianity, Hitler, or even Germany, for that matter. Because there was anti-Semitism in the Roman times as well.
Really?
Yeah, the anti-Semitism has been around a long, long time.
So I don't get that. I don't understand where a thing like that. I mean, if it's not coming from a particular. I mean, I know all kinds of Jewish people. They're just not particularly different from anybody else. So I don't understand where anti-Semitism can come from in some ultimate sense if it's not from a particular set of beliefs about those people that get promoted somehow.
Well, they get manipulated. It's a particular set of beliefs about those people, but they were it's a case of demonizing. It's a case of demonizing particular people and using them as a scapegoat for your troubles. The early Christian church did the same thing. You had Jews being demonized in order to the problem that your crops are not growing must be the Jews, and that didn't change until till witchcraft trials came around, where the same kind of messages got transferred from Jews to witches now, and anybody and everybody who got accused of being a witch was usually found guilty and executed. It's a scapegoat thing.
All right. Well, okay. Let's move on. That's enough about that stuff. Now, once again, we are the non-prophets. That means we are people who think about the future without claiming to have any kind of miraculous, supernatural, outside influence telling us what's going to happen. We just use our brains. And people are always stopping me on the street and saying, "Hey, non-prophet, can I be a non-prophet too?" I said, "Yeah. What you got to do is you got to learn how to think. That is the secret to being a successful non-prophet." On the TV show, we were always getting callers talking about, prefacing their attacks by saying how intelligent and educated we seem to be. You know what? I am a high school graduate with 2 years of art school, which I dropped out from. Okay, there's my educational background. But so why is it that that fundamentalists watching our public access show in Austin, their impression of me was that I'm all educated, and the answer is that I know how to think. I've learned the skills of thinking. Thinking is not this thing that happens automatically. It's not something that happens automatically that you're born with, and either random chance made you a smart person or a dumb person. There are rules, there are principles of proper reasoning, and it doesn't take a lot of education or even a lot of innate intelligence to be able to apply those rules. Reasoning is just a skill, and anybody can improve it with practice. Most people don't know how to draw reasonable conclusions from evidence because our education system tends to concentrate on teaching students what to think rather than how to think. And that's an oversight which I will attempt to remedy in this series of talks on here on our show, which we're going to call reasoning, and science. These talks are intended to explain the practical advantages of good reasoning skills to the average listener. I won't be getting into any deep philosophical questions. I'm just going to explain various rules of thumb that you can use to improve your reasoning skills and provide examples of how they work so you can see their practical value before you adopt them yourself. Now, I know that many of our listeners believe that human reasoning is limited and that there are certain truths that reason can't reach, particularly those few that are that subscribe to various religious beliefs. That's fine. You can still benefit from improved reasoning in whatever cases you think that reasoning is appropriate. You're still relying on your own judgment when you decide when to suspend rational thought, so improving your reasoning skill can only help you when you make such decisions. Before I start, I want to say a word or two about negativity. People who run afoul of hardline critical scrutiny often complain about the critic's negativity. But the only sense in which rejecting an invalid claim is negative is that the other person may feel insulted. The remedy for this is to exercise tact, which I don't often do, but that's the remedy if you want to apply it. Not to remain silent and allow nonsense to gain or wallow in popular acceptance is itself negative. Okay, so the first thing I want to talk about is the concept of falsifiability. The principle of falsifiability says that it must be possible to conceive of evidence that would prove the claim false if you encountered that evidence. It may sound paradoxical, but in order for a claim to be true, it has to be falsifiable. In order for it to be meaningful to say that a claim is true, it has to be falsifiable. The rule of falsifiability is a guarantee that if the claim is false, the evidence can prove that it's false. And if the claim is true, the evidence won't prove that it's false, in which case the claim can tentatively be accepted as true until such time as evidence is brought forth that does disprove it. The rule of falsifiability, in short, says that the evidence must matter. And as such, it is the first and most important fundamental rule of evidential reasoning. The rule of falsifiability is essential for this reason. If nothing conceivable could ever disprove a claim, then the evidence that does exist doesn't matter. It would be pointless to even examine the evidence because the conclusion is already known. The claim is invulnerable to any possible evidence. This would not mean that the claim is true. It would mean that the claim is meaningless. This is so because it is logically impossible for any claim to be true, quote, no matter what, unquote. For every true claim, you can always conceive of evidence that would show that the claim isn't true. And in other words, again, every true claim is falsifiable. For example, the true claim that the lifespan of human beings is less than 200 years is falsifiable. It would be falsified if a single human being were to live to be 200 years old. Similarly, the claim that water freezes at 32 degrees Fahrenheit is falsifiable. It would be falsified if water were to freeze at, say, 34 degrees. Each of these claims is firmly established as a fact, and we do not expect either claim ever to be falsified. However, the point is that they could be, right? We could find some guy who's 200 years old, or we could try to freeze water and have it not freeze till we get to, 28 degrees. Any claim that could not be falsified would be devoid of any propositional content. That is to say, it would not be making a factual assertion. Instead, it would be making an emotive statement, a declaration of the way the claimant feels about the world. Non-falsifiable claims don't communicate information. All that they describe is the claimant's value orientation. They communicate nothing whatsoever of a factual nature and hence are neither true nor false. They are propositionally vacuous. They mean nothing. There are two principal ways in which the rule of falsifiability can be violated. Two ways, in other words, of making non-falsifiable claims. The first variety of non-falsifiable claim is the undeclared claim, a statement that is so broad or vague that it lacks any meaning. The undeclared claim is basically unintelligible and consequently meaningless. Consider, for example, the claim that crystal therapists can use pieces of quartz to restore balance and harmony to a person's spiritual energy. What does it mean to have unbalanced spiritual energy? How is the condition recognized and diagnosed? What evidence would prove that someone's unbalanced spiritual energy had been or had not been balanced by the application of crystals? Most New Age wonders, in fact, consist of similarly undeclared claims that dissolve completely when exposed to the solvent of rationality. The undeclared claim has the advantage that virtually any evidence could be adduced could be interpreted as congruent with the claim, and for that reason it is especially popular among paranormalists who claim precognitive powers. And here we're getting directly into the issue of prophets versus non-prophets. Gene Dixon, for example, predicted that 1987 would be a year filled with changes for Caroline Kennedy. Dixon also predicted that Jack Kemp would face major disagreements with the rest of his party in 1987, and that worldwide drug terror would be unleashed by narcotics czars in that same year. She further revealed that Dan Rather may or may not be hospitalized in 1988, and that Whitney Houston's greatest problem in 1986 would be balancing her personal life against her career. The undeclared claim boils down to a statement that can be translated as whatever will be, will be. The second variety of non-falsifiable statements, which is even more popular among paranormalists, involves the use of the multiple out, that is, an inexhaustible series of excuses intended to explain away any evidence that would seem to show the claim was false. Creationists, for example, claim that the universe is no more than 10,000 years old, and do so despite the fact that we can observe stars that are billions of light years from the Earth, which means that the light must have left those stars billions of years ago, and which proves that the universe must be billions of years old. Creationists respond to this disproof of their claim by suggesting that God must have created the light already on the way from those seemingly distant stars at the moment of creation 10,000 years ago. No conceivable piece of evidence, of course, could disprove the claim that an omnipotent God is pulling pranks on us to make us think that things are one way when they are in fact another. Additional examples of multiple outs abound in the realm of the paranormal. UFO proponents, faced with a lack of reliable physical or photographic evidence to buttress their claims, point to secret government conspiracies that allegedly prevent the release of evidence that would support their case. Psychic healers claim that they can heal you if you have enough faith in their psychic powers. Psychokinetics say that they can bend spoons with their mind if they are not exposed to negative vibrations from skeptical observers. Tarot readers can predict your fate if you're sincere in your desire for knowledge. The multiple out means, in effect, heads I win, tails you lose. Next week we will talk about the principle of comprehensiveness. And Russell, do we have any feedback in the chat room to this particular thing? Because that was long, and people, if anybody's saying anything about it, okay, guess it's just obvious to everyone who's in the chat room. All right, that's enough. That's enough of that. Until next week. Where are we now? We got about 10 minutes left in the show.
Yeah, about.
We were talking. We started to get into the question of Santa Claus last week. Maybe we can do a little bit more of that at the end of this show. Russell, do you want to get into that?
Sure.
All right. Why don't you remind everybody what we were talking about?
Okay, last week when I was on, I was talking about how we're expecting a new baby, which will be my first child, but not my wife's, from a previous marriage. And we were talking about the idea of whether kids should be told to believe in Santa Claus. Neither of her other kids have ever believed in Santa Claus, but the youngest daughter said that she'd like to tell the new baby that Santa Claus is real, and I'm faced with the question of whether or not it's a good idea to tell a child that things exist that aren't true. And my wife is making thumbs down signs at me and sticking out her tongue, and apparently this isn't really open for debate, but But I thought it was an interesting question for atheists, since atheism is basically defined by refusing to believe in something that isn't true.
Yeah, and that's why here we are on the Atheist Network, and I'm just starting this series of talks on the subject of just critical thinking in general, right? Even though Santa Claus is not really an issue as far as atheism is concerned, because he's not a god, right? I mean, he falls into that pile of other things that people claim or believe in that don't happen to be gods, and so atheism itself does not directly apply. But as atheists, it seems to me, we are supposed to be the people who care whether it makes sense to believe certain things or not. If the reason for this is that if you're an atheist but you got no reason for why you don't believe, if you've rejected belief in God because you think because of what Christians are always accusing us of, right? Because we didn't get a pony on our birthday, or because grandma didn't get the cure for cancer that she needed, or because you had a bad day at work or whatever, right? They're always drumming up these emotional reasons not to believe in God. Those are not good reasons not to believe in God. They're not good reasons not to believe in anything. Those are just emotional excuses. Yes, Russell?
Well, I just want to say, though, it's interesting how the belief in Santa Claus is pushed, though, because it's different from the belief in God in that the people who are telling other people to believe in Santa Claus don't really believe it themselves and expect that the other people will one day grow out of their belief in Santa Claus. In fact, I've heard Christians argue that you shouldn't teach kids about Santa Claus, because when they realize you lied to them about that, won't they stop believing in God later?
I think it's interesting to go back to this little blurb about the Scrooge the Lawyer show, remake of A Christmas Carol by fundamentalists, where they say together the Marley and Dr. D. James Kennedy show why Christmas, even for those who do not believe, is truly a day to celebrate, right? By saying all these lies about the impact of Christian teachings on human culture. What they are saying, in effect, is, even if it ain't true, even if you think there was no Jesus, right, and there is no God, you still should recognize Christmas as this important holiday because of all the great effects that belief in that stuff has had. And that's getting to that same issue again, right? It's lying to people for their own good. I'm going on the record here. I do not think that it is okay to lie to people for their own good. I think people have a right to accurate information, and when you lie to somebody for their own good, you are demeaning that person as a human being. Yes, Russell?
Here's something from Martin in the chat room. He's actually comparing talking about Santa Claus to talking about Mickey Mouse, Bugs Bunny, Rudolph. He says we can love the characters and still acknowledge that they're fictitious.
Exactly right. Exactly right. I don't think stories of Jesus are a good basis for, say, morality. Right, for saying, well, there's a God and he made up the rules of right and wrong, and therefore that's the rules of right and wrong. On the other hand, when people say, this Jesus guy, I'm reading the Bible and he has said some stuff that seems pretty wise, that's not too bad. I would just want those people to make sure not to ignore
Thomas Jefferson thought the same thing about Jesus, after all.
Yeah, at least he thought that about bits of what Jesus had to say. It's just important for people who are taking Jesus as an inspirational character rather than necessarily factual or necessarily indicating the existence of a particular God. If they're going to take him as an inspirational teacher, they need to be taking into account the things attributed to Jesus that are not such good things, right? Like cursing the fig tree when it's not giving him figs when it ain't the season for figs. What about you, Vic? What do you think about? You think that it's harmless for little kids to? Now, let's remember, of course, that I was brought up told that there was a Santa Claus. didn't take me long to figure it out once I started thinking about it, but it didn't ruin me for life. What do you think?
Well, the same thing. We were told that Santa Claus was going to bring us presents, and he was going to come through the chimney. And every year, my father set up the fake chimney because we didn't have a fireplace. So, but after about, oh man, I was really young. You got to realizing that Santa Claus was mom and dad, and those times we went to the store and they didn't want us around while they were shopping, they were buying us the Santa Claus gifts. No real harm in Santa Claus. It's a harmless little story, just like Mickey Mouse and Donald Duck, like Martin says. There's nothing, they're going to figure it out sooner or later anyway. You can let off the tooth fairy, the same thing. You wake up in the morning after you've lost one of your little teeth, and there's some denomination of money under the pillow. Eventually you'll figure it out that that was mom and dad putting the money under the pillow, or the presents under the tree, or any of the other stories that we use. I don't think there's anything harmful about Santa Claus at all.
Well, yeah, I hear what you're saying. I don't know of any adults that still believe in him. that for me would be the deciding factor, right? Because it's just I made an analogy last week when we talked about this that there's nothing wrong with, say, making a movie about evil robots from the future coming back in time to kill a guy or kill a woman before she gives birth to the guy that's going to stop the evil robots.
Me2, excellent thing at Universal Studios.
There was nothing wrong with making that film. The problem comes in when a guy walks out of that theater going, maybe there's an evil robot after me. That's the problem. When it's entertainment, there's nothing wrong with entertainment as long as people know that it's entertainment. And the risk, anytime you spin entertainment as, this is really true, without fessing up at some point that it's not, that's when you have a problem. I'm in the entertainment business. I got to care about this stuff. Yes.
Let's see. Jeff Jones in the chat says, well, there are a lot of things that many people aren't completely honest about with very young children, and I tend to think that learning that some things you take for granted, i.e. the existence of Santa Claus as a child, aren't true, even though most of your peers, other kids, believe it to be, is a good lesson for the need to apply scrutiny on other things that most people believe. And MacHead70 said, I don't think that children will be scarred by finding out you lied to them regarding Santa, but it may teach them a lesson in rational thinking, not to take everything you hear as absolute truth.
This came up last week, too, and I think I disagree, because there are plenty of things in life plenty of opportunities for everybody as they're growing up to discover that things they thought were true aren't true without anybody actively lying to them, right? Science is finding out that previously well-established theories have limits or loopholes all the time, right? Nobody has to actively lie to scientists to get them to learn the important lesson of, not everything that you assume is true is necessarily really for sure true, right? Anything could turn out to be not true later based on further evidence you might get. So the idea that we should go ahead and lie to our children so that they will learn that important lesson, I think that's an excuse that is unnecessary. Thank you.
I don't know. I grew up not believing in God. It didn't take me very long as a kid to figure out that this was just a cock and bull story. But I also ran into that wall where everybody else around me was a believer, and if you were brave enough to admit that you didn't, you would end up setting yourself up for a lot of harassment, and sometimes that harassment was sort of brutal.
Right. We do occasionally hear stories of kids getting beat up over the question of the existence of Santa Claus. It's much rarer than Christianity, but still. Well,
you don't get your house burned down if you're not a believer, or if you're a believer. If you're a believer in Santa Claus, don't want to burn your house down for not believing in Santa Claus. They will burn your house down if you're not a believer in Christianity in certain parts of this country. It has happened. It will happen again. Yeah.
Here's a nice Thomas Jefferson quote. From his Works, Volume 4, page 365, quote, "The day will come when the mystical generation of Jesus, by the Supreme Being as his Father, in the womb of a virgin, will be classed along with the fable of the generation of Minerva in the brain of Jupiter." That's a great quote.
Yeah, well, that day hasn't come yet, so...
And even Thomas Jefferson didn't know everything.
It still could happen.
But that day will come. There is no religion that has existed throughout all of human history, right? Now, it may be that Christianity falls by the wayside and gets classed as myth, and we get some other stupid-ass religion taking its place, right? That's pretty likely. But that Christianity will be around forever? Not a chance. Not a chance.
It only exists today is because it had power in government and it was allowed to force itself upon people at the risk of death. You know, follow us and be a part of our religion or die. You didn't have a choice.
Exactly.
Had it not been for, and we have cleverly come up with a way in this country to prevent that from ever happening, and that is called the First Amendment.
Right. The rise of individual liberty has been the downfall of Christianity, right? As we read those statistics early on, yeah, I know, Russell. He's making all kinds of hand signals at me. I know. I'm wrapping it up. As we read in those statistics, you know, even when a horrifying tragedy, which is like the bread and butter of Christianity, right? Horrifying tragedy equals more warm butts in the pews. Even when that happens, they get a temporary increase, and then it falls off even more. In our modern culture, where there is individual freedom, freedom of thought, freedom of opinion, freedom of speech, that is the death knell of Christianity. It may take a while, but as our good friend Steve-O said in the opening music, a change is gonna come.
And all of the freedoms we take for granted today are all in spite of religion and Christianity in particular. They're hard fought against Christianity to obtain some of them.
That's it, Vic. You got the last word, and now our closing music.